Interesting. Now, let's get talking. The importance of Nigeria's economic diversification towards shared prosperity across the country has continued to gain momentum at different forums. This development has been attributed to serve as a roadmap that will transmit Nigeria's economy from a monoproduct economy to a more robust and diversified one that offers opportunity for real growth. And of course, similarly, a shift from the reliance on crude oil as a source of revenue generation will make the government take a critical look at enormous agricultural resources that could make Nigeria one of the top 10 contributors to global gross domestic product. Now, ahead of the Society of Women in Taxation Pop Personality Lecture that will hold this Friday, I'm going to be speaking live via Zoom to look at the roadmap, yes, of course, and to chart it out for economic advancement for the Nigerian state. I have two guests joining me via Zoom. But first is Dr. Ifueko Omoigui Okauru. She's the former chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. And of course, my second guest is the national chairman of SWIT. SWIT is the Society of Women in Taxation. She's also Dr. Ruth Abiola Adimula. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us on Business Nigeria this afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, Dr. Ifueko, I'm going to start with you. It's really a pleasure to have you on Business Nigeria. I went back to check and to see all of the giant strides you made during 2004 and 2012 at the FRS. Can you take us through? I know a lot was done, but can we just do an overview of some major achievements? I see the way you improve the staff welfare, making them to understand that it's more than just taxation. They could learn other things. I can go on and on. Just take us through some of this.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to your program. I'll say that it will take more than this program to even highlight a few things, but let me just name a few. One, I think, is even bringing to the fore the importance of taxation. Again, like I tell people, the reforms didn't start with me. The reforms started with my predecessor, who was the chair, Balama Manu, of the FRS. Again, all driven by the president at the time, President Olusegun Obasanjo, and the Minister of Finance at the time. I believe that was Adam Chiroma. And I remember when I was interviewed for the job, and I asked Olusegun Obasanjo really what was his objective of the reforms and what he wanted to achieve. He mentioned that at some point the country will not be dependent, will need to be less dependent on oil, and that there was a need to start building the country to focus on growing non-oil taxation and ensuring that the revenues needed to drive the development of our country and the funding required to drive the development of our country was in place. And the level of dependence on oil was not healthy. And I remember also during his tenure, before I came in, and that was when oil prices crashed. And I think that realization that, look, oil prices could crash anytime. What do we do? So that was, I think, first of all, to put at the center point taxation. So I believe that's what one of the achievements I would say was done. So that you don't put revenue at the backbench. We put in place a law, the very first time of putting in place the Federal Inland Revenue Service Establishment Act, which was designed to make the Federal Inland Revenue Service autonomous, fund itself, and not have an excuse not to drive revenue, and also make the Federal Inland Revenue Service a coordinating body, in a sense, of all revenue generation throughout the country. Federal Inland Revenue Service was therefore chairing the Joint Tax Board. They've always done that, but to really emphasize the need for it to just put in the law, recognize the need for it as a coordinating regulator to ensure that the provisions of the personal income tax, which is really unusual, that is spread amongst right now 37 tax authorities, but it's one law we're all executing. And so the Federal Revenue Service, as chair of the Joint Tax Board, but has responsibility as FRS to ensure that it coordinates that across the country. And then also for all non-related, personal income taxes, corporate taxes, stamp duties, capital gains tax, value-added tax, and any other revenue generating sources of funds to drive that, including petroleum profits tax. So in putting in place the law, it wasn't to neglect oil as a source of revenue, but it was basically to ensure that all revenues, both oil and non-oil revenues, had one agency that took the pride of place in ensuring that was done. Now, of course, to do that, you needed to therefore ensure you had the right people, the right systems. Some I started, some were not able to be finished, some were finished, some needed to be, continued on an ongoing basis. So I would say that's one. The second thing was that from the taxpayer's point of view, while raising that awareness, was also to make things convenient for the taxpayer. And so at the time I came in, if you wanted to pay withholding tax, you go to an office. You wanted to pay stamp duty, you go to an office. You wanted to pay capital gains tax, you go to another office. So it was all, it wasn't convenient. You in one city, you could go to 4 or 5 different offices to pay tax. So the concept of the one-stop center, and the reorganization of the tax office to really focus on what revenue administration was all about, which includes returns processing, payment processing, audit as a necessary part of the revenue administration process, and of course, investigation if there are issues that needed to have further investigation, enforcement, and all traditional revenue administration processes. The whole idea, therefore, was to professionalize the tax office, center it, make it more convenient for the taxpayer, and also not just focus on the physical infrastructure. At that time, we had the likes of InterSwitch who were looking for an opportunity to showcase, the fact that you could pay at one point, and so that kind of rhymed significantly with what we wanted to do, and so that's when the whole idea of pay direct in the banking system, where you pay and you pay for everything you need to pay at one point, and it's all recognized, for the taxpayer. So those are the two things. I know you talked about staff welfare. I didn't want to just overemphasize that, but I think what I'll just say regarding staff is the fact that we wanted our staff to be proud members of a very noble profession. Be professional in the way they do things. A lot of capacity building took place. Even the way we structured the organization had capacity at the back of our mind to build capacity. There was a whole fight against the use of tax consultants who were not adding any value to the system. And the whole idea was that, yes, there may be some immediate pain because you're not going to get as much revenue in the immediate term, but ultimately, you build a sustainable organization. So those are I would say, some of the major highlights of what we've done.
Really, really interesting. Now, this is the maiden edition of the Distinguished Personality Lecture, and this is in honor for you. This is going to be particularly for you, in your honor. Let's talk about the topic now, the roadmap for economic advancement. Do you think that states are doing enough to generate more revenue from the non-oil end?
I don't know why you're focusing on states. We're discussing economic advancement, which cuts across at the federal, the state, and the local government. And the answer is across board. Across board. There's a lot that still needs to be done. And I think fundamentally, across board, the gains we had in the past, I think we need to get back to that, where we still have not recognized, not just in terms of the law, because I must say the current administration, in enacting the finance bill every year, has really taken one of the things that was, planned, during those tax reforms and executed it brilliantly. By having a finance bill together with the budget, and by that way the tax laws are revised. I must give kudos to the Minister of Finance and all the related teams and all those that have worked on that, and the legislature and the president for making that happen. But yet, in spite of that, you step back and you still get the sense that revenue generation is competition amongst agencies. It's competition between federal, state, and local governments. It's not about collaboration. It's still not yet, and I see we are talking more about it now. It's not yet about having one database, harmonized, and also recognizing one authority. When you fragment the points of collecting certain types of revenues, you lose the essence and the value of bringing it all together. So that mindset that we're all in it together, that mindset that is about building a common system that everyone ties into, that mindset that revenue must be accounted for, that mindset that leakages should be, you can't completely eliminate it, but should be significantly eliminated. That there's no tolerance for leakages. That mindset that we should stop using consultants just because we need cash today does not build a system. I mean, that mindset, I think, is where we really need to start with. And I think that we need a lot of work in that regard.
Let me hold on now. Let me talk to Dr. Adimula. She has joined us now, and that's Dr. Ruth Abiola, who's the National Chairperson of SWIT. If you can hear me, Dr. Adimula, let's talk a bit about SWIT and women's involvement in taxation. What are your aims and objectives in general?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. For the Society of Women in Taxation, our aims and objective is to promote the ideals of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, particularly in respect to the taxation, tax policies, and guidelines in the country. And most importantly, to also work directly with the informal sector, the women in business, and we do this through media publications, publicity, school programs, and related activities to ensure that we engage the general public, especially the informal sector, to know the right taxes to pay, and also we serve as an abinja between the general public and the tax authorities.
So can I follow up with you and ask that why Dr. Okauru for this maiden edition of this lecture?
Yes, Dr. Okauru, the former executive chairman of Federal Inland Revenue Service, is a distinguished member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. She is also one of our patrons, and she has contributed tremendously to tax profession in Nigeria and even beyond. In addition to that, she is a woman of intelligence that we believe that the wealth of knowledge that she has in this area is good enough to be shown to the entire populace, at least for the promotion and the progress of the socioeconomic aspects in the country. And we are glad to do this. This is the first time that SWIT is doing it. And when we considered a lot of things, we discovered that she has all the necessary complementary aspects, both intellectually, physically, experience, and everything that it takes to be able to engage the government and the general public on how to advance this country in the socio-economic sector.
Interesting. Now, let me take the question out to Dr. Okauru now. Let me ask you about the forthcoming personality lecture again, but particularly this time around the role of women in economic development. Bring us up to speed. What kind of roadmap are you thinking about, or would you wish to be implemented? Do you think women in tax administration are doing as much as they should? Can they do better?
I'll be giving you some insight into what I'm going to say. So I look forward to you listening to the presentation on Friday. I now know that you want to know about women. And so I'll bear that in mind.
Okay, yeah. I think I just wanted to know if they are doing enough in the tax environment.
Okay, so let's not link it to the lecture.
Okay.
Let me talk about women just generally.
All right.
Women are a tremendous strength and a tremendous force. And I'm so proud of Dr. Adimula, who leads the Society of Women in Taxation, not just because she's a woman, but because she's a role model for other women and other persons in taxation. I met her for the very first time recently. And what do I see in her as an example? I see in her what I see in a lot of women. I see her ability to focus on achieving results. I see her ability to, once she decides she wants to achieve something, she sees it to the very end. I see her ability to pay attention to detail. I see her ability to be able to mobilize teams, drive teams to success. And honestly, those are also the strengths of the women I've related with and the women I know in this country that sit in every profession, not just tax, medicine, nursing, everywhere, engineering, construction, art, movies, name it. So when you talk about have they done enough, it's a country where we should be? No. Have I done enough? No, I haven't. So can we do more? A lot more. Do we have the capacity to do more? Yes. Now, what then are the issues with women? And let me say that, unfortunately, it's something that, and part of what I'm going to talk about in my lecture are my personal thoughts and reflections. Over 60 years in living as a Nigerian. And I've realized over time, for some people, they realize it at birth. For some people, they realize it midway in their career. I realized it pretty late because my upbringing did not even recognize that, oh, we have a daughter. I'm the only daughter of my parents. And we were all brought up equally. Not many people have that experience. And what I find is that we're suboptimizing women. Not because the women don't have the capacity, not because the women don't have the zeal, but sometimes just because you're a woman. Our society does not really elevate the woman where she should be. So to answer your question, have they done enough? Just like everybody else, just like the men, just like everybody across the states, just like the government, just like in the private sector, have we done enough? No, because if the country is where it is, then there's a lot more that we can do. Can the women do more? Yes. And it's quite disappointing that little changes in legislature that will give women better positioning in our country, to aspire for the highest of authorities and to be given, they say we should grab it. And the laws, and when I was talking about tax reform, I talked about, putting a law in place. So laws are fundamental to creating a culture, to creating the institution, to building an environment, and to building our country. The laws of our country right now do not give our women enough seat at the table. And that's an area that we need to do a lot more because the women are ready. And I must even add, at the risk of, again, this is subject to debate, we're actually top of our class wherever we are.
Interesting stuff. Now, almost wrapping up now, I would like to ask you again. I'm a journalist, and the figures we see is that our GDP or our tax to GDP ratio remains around 6%, maybe hovering around that, while some African countries are doing far better than that. Now, I want to ask that with the adoption of technology, can we do more than we are doing? And how can we improve this without necessarily increasing taxes across board?
Let me just note that without a doubt, technology helps. And technology enables countries, individuals, organizations to move at record speeds that they never thought was possible, to do things they never thought was possible. And so, yes, with the adoption of technology, and let me say whole-scale adoption that is not limited to just the urban areas, that is not limited to just a select few, wholesale adoption across the country in every nook and corner, where you have connectivity from one corner to the other, where the phones, the smartphones that give you access and give you ability to access connectivity and reach out to a knowledge base that many people are contributing to, is affordable and are able to be accessed by anyone with no one left behind. So the able, the disabled, the men, the women, the children, the adults, they all see that power. And government itself is driven by the phone. You want to pay your bill, put it here. You want to do anything, you do it here, without having to necessarily see anyone. So there's no doubt that with that whole-scale adoption, it's important. But let me also add one thing. Now, let me add that technology doesn't work alone. Technology doesn't work alone. Technology works with laws. Technology works fundamentally with the people who drive the technology. And for people to drive technology where there's full-scale adoption, we must all be on the same one page. We must be willing to collaborate, not fight each other, not point fingers, not complain that one thing is bad and the other. Not that things will not be bad. We should all be focused on that one goal and see obstacles as opportunities to surmount obstacles. For me, that's probably the hardest challenge. The technology is there, but collaborating with each other across ethnic groups, across political parties, let's believe in one Nigeria. So beyond technology, and technology can help, but those in the leadership at the various levels, whether it's government or private sector, the military, wherever, must have one goal. That coalition of a common voice, that is how we want to build our country, will surmount any obstacle we could ever have.
Very, very interesting one there. Dr. Adimula, a parting shot from you. What more should we expect at the lecture series on Friday?
Yes, thank you very much. The lecture is going to be very educative and is going to set some roadmaps for advancement in the socio-economic development in this nation. Knowledgeable people, 6 executive governors representing their regions are coming as panelists to discuss the lecture that our honoree will give on Friday. And in addition to that is the fact that you may want to listen to candidates who don't have plans for the socio-economic advancement of this country. There will be room for them to tell Nigerians what they have in plan for us. And so we use this opportunity to invite all professional bodies, women associations, the 3 arms of the government, because this is an epoch-making event that will go down in the annals of the history of this country.
All right.
That the Society of Women in Taxation, the women wing of CITN, has organized this program. Thank you very much.
All right, ma. Thank you so much, Dr. Adimula. There, you've made your point. Dr. Ifueko, any parting shots there? You have anything to say as we wrap up this segment?
Well, The parting shot I'd like to say, first of all, I really like your questions, and I hope we'll see you also on Friday.
Okay.
And I look forward to feedback at the end of the lecture, because feedback is the oil of creativity and the oil of improvement. The parting shot I'd like to say is coming up with a roadmap is a lot easier than executing the roadmap. But it helps that we even understand the roadmap. It helps that we all agree with the roadmap. Whatever you see in the FRS, what was achieved in that period of 2004 to 2012, which even in 2022 resonates, of which I'm so much proud of to be a part of, was because we started with a roadmap. We started with a roadmap that we all agreed to. We started with a roadmap that we believed in. And we also had a roadmap that now drove our meetings every single step of the way, monitoring, tracking, and ensuring that that roadmap was executed and that the goals that we wanted to achieve were achieved. The roadmap on Friday is a start. But we all need to believe in a roadmap. We all need to come together to move our country forward. We're not happy with where our country is. We need to all believe on that roadmap, believe that there is hope. But more importantly, be part of the delivery of executing that roadmap.
Interesting stuff.
My prayer is the roadmap I will be sharing on Friday will help in pulling a coalition together for a discussion that will drive other roadmaps so that we all have one roadmap, not different roadmaps. That we all collectively work together to build our country. We have such a wonderful country that sometimes you just step back and you just wish that we knew the strength that we have.
Indeed.
Because we are letting this whole thing go. So my prayer is that we listen, we come to the event, we take this as input, and we also, beyond Friday, influence our leaders to come together across political parties. And let's have one roadmap that we all believe in, that we all execute together. Thank you.
It's really a good way to live it. I must thank you so much there, Dr. Ifueko Omoigui Okauru. She's the former chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FRS, and also National Chairperson of SWIT, Dr. Ruth Abiola Adimula. Thank you so much. Do enjoy the rest of your day.